Hi everyone and welcome back to the Colour Cave where we like to play with art stuff. My name is Jem and today we're going to take a little meander into our sketchbooks. You can see I have my lovely llama on the front here. So this is kind of a precursor to another project. I have got another batch of the smooth covered notebooks that I want to customise with Posca, and one of the things that I had done in the underwater scene, if you remember, was there was a little clownfish swimming about. And I realised at that point that I really didn't know what I was drawing or how to draw one, and I kind of made it up as I went along. So I want to rectify that. So today I'm going to do a little study on clownfish and just kind of familiarise myself with them a little bit more, you know, get to know them a little bit better, so that when it comes to doing them on the notebooks, I'm a lot more confident with it. And this is an ideal thing to do in your sketchbook if you're unfamiliar with a specific idea or object that you want to draw. It's worthwhile just taking, you know, a little half an hour session or however long that you've got just to kind of explore it a bit more and practice it. And then you can store that information away for another time, because you never know when you might have to draw that same thing again. Clownfish maybe not so much, but you know, with maybe more familiar objects. So I've got my sketchbook here, I've got my little sketching pencil case with all my different pencils in. I'm just using an HB Mechnical pencil to begin with. And I've also printed off a bajillion reference photos of clownfish just from Google, just for reference and for this exercise. So when I do a study, I like to have a double page spread like this, so that I can just kind of keep going and scribbling down my ideas, and then towards the end have something that kind of resembles, you know, the final product, and you'd hope that you've made some advances by then. So when I do this as well, I start over here and I work this way. The other thing I've got with me here as well is some coloured pencils, because I do like to explore the different shades and varieties. So I've picked out my Prismacolor pencils for this, and the reason I've picked Prismacolor is they've got a really nice selection of yellows into oranges and into reds, which is obviously going to be quite helpful when it comes to a clownfish. So the first thing I'm going to look at is their actual body shape, because one of the things that I wasn't sure about when I tried before was where their fins were and how many fins they had and like the shape of their tail and that kind of thing. Now in terms of fish, I think they've got a very soft sort of rounded shape to them. You know, they don't have a lot of harsh edges, well, as much as a harsh edge as a fish can have. But that's the kind of thing we're looking at. And I try, like I do with everything else, just to split it up into sections. So we've got a head section. So if we just put a little oval in for the head section, and then the next part along there's a fin. But when I look at their body shapes, it seems to depend on what position they're in when they're swimming, what shape their body actually looks. So we can simplify it down just by making a sort of rectangular shape just now. And then it tapers down into their tail, which is, I would call it like a squoval. So it's like a square with rounded corners, squoval. And depending on the fish as well, it seems to vary. Having looked at all these pictures, the size of their tails can be quite big or they can be quite small. So I think we'll start with maybe start with a medium-sized tail. And then they've got all these fins. There's loads of fins. There's loads of fins. So they've got one up beside their head, which I'm assuming would be their dorsal fin. I'm not very good with my fish anatomy, but it seems to be not directly behind their head, but they almost like it. They have like a slope that comes up from their head. And then they have this dorsal fin, and then they have another one further down. So straight away, I would know that my proportions are wrong because I can't actually fit in that other fin. So there we go, 5 minutes in and I've learned something already. So I'm just going to erase this part. This is just a cheap kneaded eraser I've got. It's nothing fancy. So I'm going to make this longer, maybe bring it to about there. So just really rough lines. And then we'll maybe put this tail section in again. So yeah, they've got this other fin as well. And it's kind of like comes down in a U shape and a curve. And then they've got this back fin, which seems to be quite large. And then that pops down and goes into the tail area. And then they've got fins at the side here. And again, these change, they don't change shape, but they look like different shapes depending on the angle and the way the fish is swimming. So in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, I'll store that away because that's an area that we can play with and change and, you know, to make the fish look as if it's moving and have that movement in the picture. And they've got little diddly fins down here as well. That's kind of hiding in there. And I've seen one or two that have got an extra part here as well. So it's almost like a mirror image of the top part. So you can see here, it's just like really simple basic shapes. It's just circles and squares if you boil it all down. And then if we just round off this tail a little bit. Now granted, this does look like a bit of a monstrosity at the moment, but we'll get there, we'll work on it. So that's kind of like a longer, slimmer one, but there's also like little short stubby ones as well. So I'm going to try and replicate this, but almost like squash it down. So again, put the head in, give them the little dorsal fin here. So I'm sticking with the same angle, the same view, just at this early stage until I familiarise myself with what's going on. So if we have these a wee bit closer together and then maybe make the tail a bit bigger and fatter this time. Oh, he's a fat fish. He's a fat fish. Okay, so we've got a skinny one and a fat one. So I'm quite happy with that. So let's try and build on this now and start to make it look a little bit more like a fish. And this repetition of these shapes, this is what helps us build and learn and store it away in our memory, you know, for whenever we may need it. So I'm still thinking about these shapes, but I'm just trying to be a little bit more confident with it now. Kind of almost like an outline here. And then see, we've got this fin. Let's bring that one right down here. And I'm looking at the positioning of this fin, and it's actually almost like under their chin. It's like here. So the really nice thing about clownfish as well is because they've got stripes on them, it gives you really good markers, you know, to work out where certain parts should be. And that's something that's quite helpful. The one constant that I've seen, although their stripes vary between, you know, each individual fish, they do have stripes in specific places. And one of those places is at the tail. And they have this white stripe that almost like segments their tails off from the rest of the fish. Now I'm just looking at my tail shape here and I can't see any that their tail's like taller than it is long, so I'm just going to erase this a little bit and change it. So they've got this white stripe and then they've got this dark outline and it comes all the way round. And then they've got the end of their tail here, which is quite a rough shape, so I'm just going to depict that with some lines. Smooth that line out a little bit. So then we've got another dark line on the other side. This part's the white part in the middle. And then we've got all these fins and things to deal with. So what we've got to remember is that the body part, it's curved, you know, they do have a shape to them. And if you look at them square on, they seem to be this sort of shape. So obviously that would be fins there. I'm having a bit of a Finding Nemo moment here. Just put a tail in, why not? So we have to remember that this curvature, we have to try and depict that when we're on the outside so that we don't look as if we've got a flat fish. Okay, so this is actually a lot more detached. It doesn't smooth out. And again, I think that would vary depending on what position the fish is in. But we'll just get that in just now. So I'll work on this top part first. So there's like a little crease almost. And again, that's just where the fin's attached to the actual body part that's round. So we need to make sure we get that in. And this kind of joins into their stripe. So, and the nice thing, the fun part is as well, these stripes, they're not just straight up and down. Some of them are really wavy and some of them are, you know, some of them are quite fat and then they go into a thin bit. So that's a place where you can be quite creative when you actually come to do your final drawings. But this stripe is in between these two fins at the top, so whatever you do, that's, you know, that's where it's going to be. So again, this fin at the back's very like the tail. So we've got this big thick black area which comes round and joins in there, and then this area is black as well. So that brings us to underneath, and again there seems to be a crease here, obviously where the body's curving down in underneath. So we can put that in quite lightly and then add in this dark area here. Now this little dorsal fin seems to be one of the darkest parts. So it's still got this this dark part that joins onto the stripe, like this part here. I'll put that in just now. But this edge seems to be quite uneven in a lot of the references I've got. And the thickness of this dark part varies as well. But there seems to be, the actual fin itself seems to be a little bit darker. And the more I look, I can see that that's the same in some of the photographs in the bottom fin as well. And it may just be the light. It's kind of difficult to tell, because obviously these little animals, they're going to be unique in their own small way. But I'm just trying to draw for as many of, literally draw from as many of these references as possible and just test things out. So then they've got this big stripe round their head, and this is the one that, it's like a collar, it kind of frames their face. So I'm going to stick mine in there. And this fin here is behind the stripe in all of the pictures. So I know that that's probably something that's quite common. And again, we've got this thick area, dark area. And then we can work on this fin here. So once we've got the basics down, we can start playing about and, you know, make this a more interesting shape as if they're having a wee flourish or a wee flap about in the water. But we just want to make sure that our basis is solid here before we start getting fancy. So there's quite an interesting pattern on some of these fins. So they've got this black part, but it's almost like scalloped. So again, if I just kind of make that a regular line. And I notice as well that the very ends of these fins, they're actually like almost transparent. And you can only see that in some of the photographs. So I'm just going to add in a few really light lines here, just to sort of depict that. Again, when you're working in graphite, you know, you've got to kind of think about what you're doing. This belly disappears on under there somewhere. Okay, so we're on to our head area here. I just want to add in a few of these lines. This is the fun part. So their eyes actually protrude from their head slightly. So in a side-on view, you're not really going to see that. But from the front, if I show you up here on this one, you know, they're going to sit out like this. And they're going to have their little eyeballs. Looking more and more like Nemo by the second. Maybe give him a mouth as well. We'll come back to that one in a minute. Again, from this side view, we may be able to see the bump of the eye on the far side. You know, like I would want to say a brow's probably the nearest thing. And then start working on this face shape. So it comes down quite sharply. And then he's got his little mouth. So again, they've got a bit of a lip. They seem to have a bit of a lip. And then this bottom part here is really rounded. So I'll just take away some of my original sketch lines there. Yeah, so if I just take out some of these initial lines, and it's more just so I don't get confused and I'm happy that I know which lines are the correct lines. Yeah, so that would be his eye on the other side. And his wee stripe's going to come round under his chin here, bless him. It's like he's got a chin strap on. And then there's the eye placement, and this is the thing I think I find the most difficult about stuff like this. Is making sure his eye's in the right place. So I'm thinking, if that's his eye there, if I draw a line across there, then his eye's going to be about here. So let's pop that in there. Oh yeah, look, it was a little fishy. And some of them have little markings around the actual eye as well. Some are dark, some are very orange. So again, I'll just put a little line in there depicting that. So there we go. I kind of feel that I've got the basic shape and I'm quite happy with that. We'd probably see a little bit of his other fin on the other side, wouldn't we? Let's add that in. And again, we'll do this sort of scalloped edge. And that's going to be a bit darker under there because it's on the other side. So yeah, well, I think that looks like a clownfish. I'm not very happy with his tail. I feel like his tail's really out of proportion. Maybe he's just got a big tail. Maybe he's just a fish with a big tail. But if I come up to this one here now, and I know this was just like a random doodle, but let's work on this because we want to be able to do a front view as well. And again, just build up some confidence with the shapes that we're using. So their heads are quite flat over here, so I would flatten that off from my initial sketch line and bring this shape all the way down and round. And I'm going to change that mouth because it looks incredibly unhappy and I don't want an unhappy fish. Yeah, that's better. So we would be able to see this part of this stripe, the white stripe, you know, the collar stripe that I was talking about. Because that's very, very prominent. And then that dorsal fin. So if we were absolutely square on, we would probably only see that dorsal fin heading back the way. And again, that would be darker because we decided that would be a darker part. And we'd maybe see this part of the tail that I was talking about. So again, I think with the complexity with this is how much of the black part you're going to see. But on the other hand, I don't suppose it will make much difference because these markings that they have, especially the black ones, seem to vary quite considerably from fish to fish. So it's not something that we maybe need to get too hung up on. So we'll just put some shadow in there. And then let's play about with these fins a little bit. So we know they're actually coming from under here, as I said before. This seems to be roughly the area where they come out from. So I'll take these lines away just now. Now we might even be able to see a little bit of the white stripe on the bottom as well, because they kind of look as if they've got a bit of a double chin. Yeah, so let's do that. And let's play about, so let's change the shape a little bit. So if it's coming out from here, maybe this one, maybe he's waving. And this is obviously this is like the fun part. Oh my. And we'll just get that edge in. I think that's a bit rounded. There's a bit jelly bean-esque. And maybe this one's a little bit flatter, you know, so if this one's waving like this, these other ones maybe like this. And I think it's all about placement here. Now we have to get them roughly the same size. Come on, Jem. Okay, so I mean, that's fairly simple. It's actually more straightforward drawing from the front than it is from the side because you don't have all these sections to contend with. Oh lordy. Okay, so I think I'll try another one in a different pose and then I'll move over to this side and I'll try one and we'll maybe do like a more sort of finished one and do it in colour. Because if the colour section, that's where it's going to get really interesting. Especially if they're bent into, you know, a specific shape or form. So let's think about maybe we're swimming round a corner. Maybe this is decided to change direction. So this is, you know, we're starting to build up the complexity here now that we're comfortable with the basic shapes and, you know, roughly what things should look like. If it was square on, we would be looking like this. But we want maybe not a 3/4 view, but something similar. So we would still have that sort of shape, but it would be slightly flattened out. And maybe you'd be able to see part of his or her back and the rest of the body's facing the other direction. So we've got the secondary fin, this one here that I was talking about earlier, we would be able to see that. And the back part would maybe be pretty much like this. I keep having this urge to place these fins much higher up, you know. In my head, for some reason, I want to attach them here. So that's something that I'm really having to remember, that they're actually quite far down. And I don't know why I'm doing that. Like, I have no idea, but that's just like a preconception I had, and that's one of the reasons that doing studies is good, because it helps you to figure stuff out. Okay, so starting to take shape now. I feel like this one's a girl. This is definitely a male. I don't know why. I wonder if there's any differences between the two. I'm going to have to look that up because that's something that's quite important. Because quite often between male and female of the species, they have different markings, or, you know, like a sort of defining feature, shall we say. Okay, so apart from size, there doesn't seem to be any differences in things like markings or the shape of anything to differentiate the male from the female. That's okay as well, but that's something that was worth checking there, and I kind of went down a rabbit hole there. Sorry. I think I'm going to keep these fins this shape. I'm quite happy with that. Okay, I'm quite happy with what's going on, so let's move over and let's get things a little bit more interesting. I kind of like this pose, so maybe we'll try one but the opposite way round, you know, so his tail's swishing round the other way. I'm going to start with the face area, and quite a few of the images I've looked at, they do have a slightly paler area in the middle of their face. Now again, that could be camera lighting, but we're going to go with that. So I'll start here. What have I got here? This is yellowed orange. This is actually one of the old school Prismacolor pencils, and it's one of the last remaining ones I have from my old set. So I'm a wee bit precious of it. So let's just get some of this down. We'll pop his little eyes in. Okay, I'm going to pick a deeper orange colour now. Now I've noticed that the areas around the eyes, they are a bit darker, so I want to work in a lot more of that darker orange here. Go back to my yellowed orange now. And blend this over the top a little bit. I'll just check out this Spanish orange. Yeah, because that's a bit more yellowy. Okay, so yeah, I'll use the Spanish orange for the middle here. And just run a layer of that over. Now, at the inside of their mouth as well, depends how far open their mouth is, but they kind of look orange in there. That's a kind of darker orange. I'll probably go a bit darker again. Might even go into a bit of pale vermilion here. So it's just a case of building up our colour now. I say paying particular attention to this area around the eye. Some of them do have like almost like a black panda eye around it. Get this nice and rich because they are really vibrant, aren't they? So we want that reflected in what's going on here. Okay, so we're going to leave his little white band and we'll start working on this dorsal fin area. So I'm going to take the yellow most of the way up there, this yellowed orange, and we'll just put the black in at the tip here. I'll pull some of that black out with the orange. Now we need to add in this tiny band of black as well, which again I think you'll probably only see on this top edge, and maybe a little bit here too. And maybe see a sliver of it on the bottom edge here too. I'm also going to give him a tiny little bit of orange underneath here as well. And that's going to be a bit darker because he's underneath. I want to get this idea of texture here, so that's why I'm using these lines. Maybe the light's catching just this edge here, because I'm thinking about, you know, next to his face there. Maybe things are a wee bit lighter there. So if I just tickle in a tiny bit of orange, a tiny bit of yellow, sorry, then that can help with that. So every couple of strokes, I'm just pressing a bit harder when I get here just to depict these lines in the fins. This is going to be a wee bit of a shadow as well. So just taking an indigo pencil here, maybe just darken that down a little bit. Don't want to do that too much though, because I don't want to muddy it up. Okay, so thinking about this back section now, we're going to be using a lot more of the oranges here as opposed to the yellows, because it's in behind. But we also have to think about, I was talking about this curvature. So there is going to be quite a distinct line there where the fin meets the main part of the body. And then also we obviously have to think about stripes as well. So let's just block in this little section here with a light layer of orange, because there's quite a lot of moving parts to this, even though you're not, you know, you don't think about it, because we've got all these big bits with stripes and whatnot going on as well. And of course we've got this fin here that we need to deal with too. Should maybe do that first actually. Just going to take away a couple of my graphite lines there. And too many lines going on in there. And again, maybe there's a bit of yellow going on this section here. Maybe zoom you in a little bit now actually. When I look at all these fish now, they just all look like they're waving. It's like, hi. Again, I'll maybe pop just a tiny bit of indigo in here. And blend that out a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so when we're thinking about this back section then, now that I've sorted myself out some lines, I think I'll find it easiest to actually put in the area of the stripe. I want this to be a little bit softer at the edges. I don't want it to be as defined because it's further in the background, and that's not to say that it's not still going to have some deep colour, but I just don't want the edges to be quite so sharp. So we'll build this up, a deeper colour in the middle part there. A lot more orange in this. I was going to put in his next stripe down, but I'm actually not going to do that. I don't need to complicate this for myself anymore. Get some yellowed orange down, maybe just one layer of the yellowed orange here. Okay, so we need to think about making this, like setting it back from his face a little bit. So again, just with this indigo pencil, bring a little bit of that up there. So that helps to indicate the curve in his body as well. And we're going to have the same at the top here because there's this, as I said, this sort of partition from the fin as well, and it's actually quite a defined line in some of them, which is interesting. And so there's almost like a crease here, so I'm not going to do that in the black though, I'll do that in the indigo, and I'll bring the indigo up here a little bit as well. Now his white stripe may have a tint of colour to it, but I'll kind of think about that later. I just want to make sure I've got everything else in order. So I'm thinking again, there might be this little patch of light maybe hitting his tail, just the you know, the angle the tail's at. So I'll stick a little bit of yellow in there first, I think, this time. And so if we remember the black on the tail, it's almost like a border, it goes all the way around. Whereas, you know, with the fins, it's just been on the edges here. And see, some of them seem to have a lot more black on their tails than others. You know, some have got a really thick band here and others just not so much. But we can build that up as we see fit. I can really work on my orange now. Obviously, you need to be careful if you're going to put the black in first, which I'm comfortable doing, but you need to watch that you don't drag that up into your, you know, your cleaner areas, your orange areas. Just so that we can see his little white stripe there, I'm just using a really pale blue to denote that. Obviously, if it was in a finished picture, you would have a background and that white stripe there would stand out, in the same round here. But just for the sake of making him look as if he's all in one piece, I just thought I'd pop that in there. It'd probably be a wee bit darker in there too, but we'll not split hairs at this stage. Or scales, as the case may be. But anyway, that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed this. I have learned so much today. I've learned a ton of stuff. I also know that Clownfish are born asexual, which is something I didn't know before I started. But I hope this process shows you don't have to be frightened to tackle something that you've never drawn before, and doing stuff like this is always going to be helpful. Obviously, this type of fish is quite unique in that it's very soft and rounded edges, but the fish anatomy will carry through to other fish. So if you do something like this, you've given yourself a basis and a grounding if it's something that you want to learn going forward. And I always take this approach for something I've never drawn before. This is a really good way to learn it without worrying about making mistakes or things looking funky, because it's in your sketchbook and that's what it's for. So I hope this inspires you to go and try draw something that you've never drawn before and have a bash at doing a study for yourself. So that's it for today, guys. I want to thank you very much for watching. You can head over to the stash shop and check some things out there. I do have some Prismacolor pencils selling individually there, and a few other bits and bobs if you want to treat yourself to something arty. So all that remains to do is to say thank you once again for watching. Please stay safe, take care of each other, and I will see you back in the cave really soon for another video. Have a good day, everyone. Bye for now.